is The Match, which is the second book in the Wilde series. Coben is joined this evening by personal friend and celebrity chef Rachel Ray. Please note that this is just one of our many upcoming author programs. If you enjoy mysteries and thrillers, we recommend tomorrow evening's discussion with award-winning crime novelist Abir Mukherjee, author of The Shadows of Men. We will also be joined next Monday at 7 p.m. by New York Times bestselling author Philip Margolin, who will be speaking about his latest legal thriller, The Darkest Place. For a full list of programs, along with descriptions and links to register, just visit our website at hudsonlibrary.org. Tonight's program will be recorded and available to watch on the library's YouTube channel. We will also be accepting audience questions during the final portions of tonight's program. If you have a question, just use the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen. We will try to get through as many questions as time permits. Also, copies of Coben's book, The Match, are available for purchase, courtesy of Hudson's independent bookstore, The Learned Owl. We will add a link in the chat for easy purchase. Now, I would like to introduce tonight's speakers. Harlan Coben is a #1 New York Times bestselling author and one of the world's leading storytellers. His suspense novels are published in 45 languages and have been #1 bestsellers in more than a dozen countries, with 75 million books in print worldwide. His Myron Bolitar series, has earned the Edgar, Seamus, and Anthony Awards. Also, many of his books have been developed into Netflix series, and maybe we'll talk about some of that this evening. Joining Harlan is Rachel Ray. Ray is a multi-Emmy Award-winning syndicated television star, iconic Food Network personality, best-selling cookbook author, founder, and editorial director of her own lifestyle magazine. She's also the founder of Yummo Organization and the Rachel Ray Foundation. Her most recent book is This Must Be the Place, Dispatches and Food from the Home Front. Now, without further ado, I turn the stage to Harlan and Rachel. Good evening to both of you, and thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thanks, Kelsey.
Thank you for having us. Yay! There is Harlan. Harlan, explain the people climbing over your head.
This was a gift my wife gave me. Each one represents, there's actually 6 of them on the wall. And each one's supposed to represent a family member. So none of us climb, none of us go into the wilderness. In fact, that's part of Boy from the Woods and the Match. We can talk about that later.
For everybody.
But, yeah,
and I was going to say it's very apropos of The Match because this is wild. The boy that literally grew up in the woods, it looks like they're climbing up your wall. Guys, this is my pristine copy of The Match, which I read in galley form in about 27, 30 hours total. I mean, I think I had a little nap in there. But what I love about Harlan is it is truly a page turner every single time. I can't put it down. And I build Harlan libraries everywhere. If you're here, first of all, thank you for knowing what a library is. Thank you for reading real books. Thank you for caring about great, great writers like Harlan Coben, my friend. And I can't even believe I can say he's my friend. We met at a party where he and his wife, Ann Armstrong Coben, were so tall. And my husband and I, come on over, honey.
It's a whole family affair here.
It's a family affair.
Hey, I'm really tall. Look at me, how tall I am.
But we were so short.
Oh, here I am.
We didn't even, and no one ever talks to us at parties. And John and I are so nervous about going to anything celebrity. We stood against the wall and they came over to us and bent way down to say hello. Way down.
We talked to tall people the entire night.
And we became fast friends.
And it was love at first sight.
And then when
Harlan and his wife, Ann.
Oh my gosh, when I realized who it was, I was so embarrassed. I didn't recognize him. He was too high. He was just way up there. He was just way up there. Harlan, before I spoil everything, and I tell you this all the time when you are kind enough to do our little show, and I mean our because John is my crew half the time, right, from here. I worry that I spoil things because I get too excited, and I do read these so fast. So can you give everybody just a brief overview of what the match is?
Sure. Well, first, I think that we can use actually these things in the back. And also, when we met that first time, we couldn't hear each other. So that's probably why we couldn't understand. We were shouting down, you were shouting up. No one understood a word we were saying. But, I was the idea came from me. I was taking a hike in the woods. If New Jersey, believe it or not, New Jersey has mountains as per the book, the Rampo Mountains. And I hate hiking in the woods. I don't get it. There's a tree, and then there's another tree, and then there's another tree, and I'm like getting bored. I like walking. I'm in the city right now. I love walking in the city, right? You see shops, you see bookstores, you see cafes, you see people's faces. That's what I love. And I'm whining and ranting as I am right now. And my family is rolling their eyes as they always do. And then I noticed on the path parallel to me, there was a boy around 5 or 6 walking by himself. So I said to myself, this is what I do all the time, well, what if this kid right now came out of the woods and said, I've always lived in the woods. I never had parents. I fended for myself. I broke into cabins, or I lived off the fruit of the land. And that's just how I've always lived. And for 35 years past, he's grown up and he still doesn't know how he ended up abandoned in the woods. And then as the match opens, he has just gotten a DNA match in one of those genealogy websites of his biological father. And he's standing across the street from his biological father for the very first time, about to get the answers that will lead him down the path that is the match. So that's how I both created the match, and that's also the sort of synopsis of the match.
The rabbit hole you're going to go down.
Yes.
And we discussed this so many times already, but let's go over it again. I love that this thing touches on so many topical issues. The DNA stuff, which John, you're so paranoid about, he would never do it.
I don't want to do it. Like, they already have enough information on me at Amazon. I don't
So
need
true.
them to know like my genealogy.
Right. Yeah, I got it,
But
man.
what I love about all of Harlan's books, for everyone that's a fan or someone that might be new to the world of this writer, you build layer upon layer. In Italian paintings, it's called impasto. You build a layer upon another layer upon another layer, and the people intertwine and the worlds kind of collide.
It's like the Marvel universe. Like, you should
really
have
is.
the Harlan universe. When is that happening?
No,
It's kind of happening already on Netflix, actually.
No, it actually is.
Yeah.
You become familiar with the people.
Yeah,
And then
really.
when you see this person and this person again, and them coming in and out of each other's lives,
It's awesome.
it's so fascinating and enthralling. I want to know how that process works, Harlan. Like, do you start with, because every book is also very topical. So there's DNA, cancel culture, the DNA sites that are so popular. There's cancel culture, there's reality television. There's all of these things that are going on in the moment. In all of your stories, there are these rambles of everything that's going on in everybody's head in the news. Do we start with a little group of things we want to think about over here? Or is it always just revisiting the characters? And when do you come up with new characters, and how does that happen?
It's both. So I gave you, that was sort of the idea, right? I gave you the seed starts, and then I figure out, well, how did he end up in the woods? I knew that before I even started the first book in the series, The Boy from the Woods. I knew how he ended up. And then I write down a bunch of things that I kind of want to write about, but I don't know if I'll get to it. And I end up getting to all of them. So exactly that. I wanted to write about the DNA genealogy sites and how that's changed our lives. I wanted to write about cancel culture. I wanted to write about Instagram influencers. And one of the funny, how I have the 4 kids and how attached I am to them, and I'll do anything to spend time with them. And my daughters were into, for a while, one of those, which I won't mention the name of the show, but one of those reality dating sort of shows. And frankly, I've seen nothing worse in my life. It's after I watch it, I actually want to have I actually want to have an operation to have the memory of watching these shows with my brain. But it was material, and I said, "Wow, these people who are made into superstars out of nowhere. Is there a way I could incorporate that in. So what ends up happening is one of the people that he gets a hit on that he's trying to find after he finds his father is somebody who won one of these bachelor type shows and now has gone missing and he was canceled for something that he did on. So all those things I'm starting to put in, and now we're filling our world. Now we're starting to fill our world.
Everybody we love. Wilde and Hester is my absolute favorite. Do you have a favorite voice when you're writing? I've complimented you many times on how well you write women and men. But do you have a favorite person when you write?
In this case, it was Hester.
Someone you want to visit most?
Well, I think in this case, it was, Hester Crimstein, who is a 70-year-old attorney who has her own TV show, like a fast-talking, wise-ass, lovable, I hope, attorney. Hester had a small part in a lot of my books, almost 20 of them, I think. I don't know if that's the exact number. Somebody out there probably knows better than I do.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
In a lot. And then I finally said last book, I said, I'd love to make her like a co-lead. So to team up this guy I described, who's this weird guy who lives in the woods and never got over this incident, he's like 35 to 40, with a 70-year-old fast-talking New York City attorney was really fun. And then I, give her a romance. I didn't see too many novels that were giving romance.
That's what I love. This sexy guy from the woods has a separate romance, not with her, but there's romance at every age. There's romance for young people, Wilde. And I'm blowing it again.
No, it's not blowing it. No, blowing she has a romance. How that romance turns out might be blowing it if you tell. One interesting thing is when I was writing it, two things, but one was that I had intended when I first started, I thought the romance was going to go in a different direction. And I put them in the room, or in her boyfriend and Hester. Yeah. And I thought something was going to happen, but when they started to talk, something else happened. I'm not going to say anything more than that, but I love those moments. And the other one was,
they really do speak to you, right? Just like us.
Well, I said, okay, here's what I want this scene to end up being.
They live.
And they start talking to each other. And the next thing I know, they ended up going in a different direction than I expected. It just didn't work. You can't force characters to do things and when they do that, that's when the plot's working the best. It's not magical. I hate when writers make it sound magical. Oh, God comes down and my fingers move. But it is true that you can't force a character that you created to do something different. And the other thing that was a huge surprise to me was The Stranger, for those who have seen either the TV show or watched the TV series or read the book, The Stranger pops up. At the end of I wrote the book and the TV series, The Stranger gets away and you kind of don't know what happened to them. And I didn't really think that much about it. And all of a sudden I'm on page 50 or 60 and The Stranger pops up. That wasn't planned before I started this book. So these
I love that. This is a real world that you live in too. This is a real world inhabited with all of these folks. And we take them all over the world when you transfer them to Netflix, to Amazon, to your projects. They go all over the planet. Now, what is that process like? And have you already started thinking about where this is going to go? And will we ever get books with new characters that start out in other countries? Because when you look at what's going on in the world now, Harlan, I mean, Ukraine, climate, everything that's going on now, are we ever going to start a book of yours, not in New Jersey or New York, but in another country?
I mean, the answer is maybe. I never, here's the thing. So each book, I just gave you how I came up with the idea from the boys from the woods, right? So then I say to myself, who's going to tell this story? Is it going to be Myron? Well, no, he's not a boy who was lost in the woods.
Gotcha.
Is it Wynn? Is it somebody new? And most of the time the answer is somebody new. So I don't plan people say, are you going to write another Wilde book? Or are you going to write another Myron book, another Wynn book? The answer is probably, and I hope so, but I'm not going to force it. I'm going to think of my idea. So the next book, for example, is all new characters. None of these people, maybe they'll have a cameo, but these people, I'm on page 150 so far, and none of them have popped up. And I don't think they will. So it was one of those where I came up with an idea, and then I say, who is going? So if someone's going to ask me, I'm sure I haven't looked at the Q&A, is Myron coming back? Is Wynn coming back? My answer is probably. It's not like I retired them, but I'm not going to force it. I don't want to.
You got it, right,
yeah.
Live it.
But for 6 books, for example, I wrote 7 Myron books in a row, and then I wrote Tell No One. And so for the next 6 books, all of the ideas worked for other people. And I thought Myron might never come back. And then I came up with this idea for a book called Promise Me, where somebody overhears teenagers talking about drinking and driving, and he pulls them aside and says, promise me you won't do that. Here's my phone number. I don't care if it's 3 a.m. I don't care what you're on. Some of you have maybe done something like this. But promise me you won't do that. This because it happened to me. This happened to me. And I didn't know it. No kids never call me. But I asked, what if? What if the kids call my hero? My hero goes, picks up a teenage girl in New York at 3 a.m, drops her off at what he thinks is a friend's house. The next day she's vanished. And then I said to myself, well, who would do that? Myron. So Myron Volatar came back. So that's how it works if I'm going to write a Myron or a standalone or a Wilde.
Right, you look at like I said this to you one time when we were talking together on my show, that it's like Almodovar. You have these people you trust and these characters that you trust, and they come in and out of existence in different stories, and it's always familiar. And I watch your books like movies when I read them. And that's what's so cool. I can't put down a Harlan book until it's done. I read them in 30 to 36 hours. I read them faster than my husband, and he's a lawyer. So that's saying something. And a musician, so he reads much faster than I do. But I simply can't stop. I really can't.
Can I ask you about your process? So like, I know one of your heroes is Stephen King.
Yeah.
And I've heard he writes at least 8 or more pages a day, every day, like without question, that's going to happen. Is that because you just said you wrote 150 pages already, and we just read this book. So what's your process? Do you write literally every day? Is it like whenever you feel like writing, or is it like I'm not going to go to bed until I write my 10, 50, whatever it is pages?
That's a really good question. I don't have some people have a word, limit, a word they have to amount of words after word count or book page count. I don't. I'm a streak writer. The last 40 to 50 pages of The Match I wrote in one day. But I've been thinking about it. It's always working in my head. So I'm not actually sitting down writing. It's always working in my head. I don't really take the day off, but some days are think days for me. Some days are that. So if a book is 400 pages long and it takes me 9 months to write, at the 8-month mark, at the most, I'll be at page 200. And the last month, I'll do the last 200. The last week, I'll do at least 100, and the last day, usually 40. So
you have an overall schedule.
I've been thinking about it. I know what has to be due, and I've been thinking about the book so frequently and replaying it in my head. A lot of writing, by the time I sit down to write, it's already written. So I write very fast when I sit down because I've been going through it in my head a lot. I also do weird drafts, like it's a new book, by the way, coming out. I forget the title of it next week, by Anna Quinlan. The fantastic Anna Quinlan is one of my heroes. It's a very short sort of essay book about how to write. And one of the things she talks about that a number of people do, and I do this too, is I write by hand. So my first draft, and I know you do this too, Rachel, because there's something freeing and childlike, right? There's something freeing.
It stays with you more when you write something by hand, even if it's the direction or the points of something that you want to get to. It sticks in your head once you put a pen to paper.
Yeah, and there's a permanence to something about being already typed up. So again, first of all, this way, so I do about 10 pages at a time, like writing and then putting it on the computer. So my first draft, which is what I count when I get on the computer, is already my second draft. So I've already thought it out. But there's something about, like, instead of having to delete where it completely disappears in the computer, there's something about drawing arrows or crossing out that just feels like I can go back to it. I can still see it. I can still think about it. So I recommend, look, to anybody out there who wants to write, my advice always is very simple, live your life this way. If it helps me write good, if it doesn't help me write bad. That's it. That's all. So if staying up till 3 a.m. helps you write, do it. It's good. If staying up to 3 a.m. kills your writing, bad. Don't do it. If talking to people helps you write, good. If talking to people, which in my case hurts you, that whatever it is that makes you write, as long as you're getting pages down, and it doesn't matter if those pages in the beginning are no good. That's one of the reasons you can do it on paper. No one has to see it.
That's what I love about the paper, because I feel like it becomes more, it goes through a weird process when I put anything into the computer. Oh, well, of course, that's what I really meant to say, or that, but I love a piece of paper because, again, you have that thing you can just go back to. That's the thing we both were saddest about when the house burned down, because John lost all of his music charts and I lost all of my notebooks. Yeah. And it was all of those cross-outs and circles and all of the scribbles that make up your life and your life's work that you miss when they're gone. And it's such an important part of the process. So you still work with paper to this day, yes?
Yep. I mean, some days, look, again, my rule is whatever makes me write. So some days I will just go straight on and write, or some days I'll outline on the computer. I change up. So in other words, if I'm getting stuck, my routine is never to have a routine. So like most writers you'll talk to have an office, and they're there at 7 in. John Grisham, who I did an event like this with recently, John has a little hut behind his house or cottage, has no internet access. He gets there X hour, he writes till X, Y hour. It's a very, very rigid sort of schedule. That's not me. I have a place in my house, but for the most part, before COVID, I go out. One reason was because having 4 kids when they were younger and having them home. So I go to Starbucks for a while. For a while, I was going to a Stop and Shop deli, had a table there. I came home smelling like olive loaf. And the story I always tell, I think I told it on your show the other day when I was on. When I was writing The Stranger, I took for the first time, this is a number of years ago, an Uber. I didn't even know what Uber was, into New York, and I felt guilty about spending the money. You know how it is, you justify it. Like, well, by the time I pay for parking so anyway, in the back, I started to write. And I wrote really well. So for 3 weeks, I took an Uber everywhere I went and finished the book in the back of an Uber.
I think there's something to be said for being outside of your comfort zone. Like John Lennon has always said, he didn't want to be too well skilled on the guitar because he didn't like the fact that he wasn't that comfortable playing it would make him write better songs.
Really?
Yeah,
that's so
relating
cool.
that. I mean, was an amazing guitarist, but even relating it to music, if I don't feel inspired, I'll pick up a banjo instead of a guitar, or a piano instead of a
different instrument.
Just to get out of the zone that you feel comfortable in, and maybe you're complacent. And that sounds like what you're doing with your writing.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And then I'll do that religiously until it stops working. So it's like riding a horse, then the horse collapses and dies. And now I'm looking for another horse.
And then you got to get a new horse.
Right. But I'm riding that horse. As long as it's working, I'm riding that horse. I am riding that horse. That's really interesting about John Lennon, and I know.
Isn't that crazy? But I love that about John, because he plays 10 instruments. So he always has another horse. I unfortunately only cook. I can draw a little bit.
And you write very well, by the way. You do write. You're I don't want to say underrated, because I think people who read your books know, but you're a very talented writer.
Hey, when you write, you have a lot of your characters Win and Wilde.
Oh, John likes all the superheroes. He calls them your superheroes.
They're human, but they're kind of superheroes.
They're superheroes.
Most of mine are not for you.
Do you see any of yourself in that? Or are you just writing these characters that are kind of
Harlan,
superheroes?
could you beat the crap out of somebody?
I mean, you're tall and impressive to us short people, so we see you as a superhero. But I don't know, where does that come from?
Most of my characters are sort of wimpy everyday man. I'm known as the guy who does the suburban mysteries, the ordinary man in the extraordinary circumstance, or woman. But so when you write as many books as I have, and including my children's book, The Match is my 35th book. 35 books. Crazy. I know. So I've written almost close to one a year. I started when I was 9, so I'm So I tried doing everything. So most of my guys are sort of, the suburban father, and they're, they talk a lot. They wear their heart on the sleeve. Wilde does not. That's why I created Wilde. I wanted one guy who was much more inner has real trouble connecting to people. And Win is a sociopath. And Win has been, I thought
I
it was,
know, it's so
Win has always
cool.
taken backseat to
Ooh, I
Myron.
love Win. Win's my favorite. I scratching
Of
my
course.
elbows. Oh, he's scratching my elbows.
He's
I
like
love,
James
I love
Bond or
Win so much. And John and I, when we read Win, we're trying to cast Win. And Wilde is the sexiest non-person. Like, I've never met Win. I don't see Win. I don't know who's going to be Win in all the things. But, oh my God, he's so hot.
Yeah. Well, you can always tell when I was writing the Myron and Win series, it was like a test for the women would say which one they would prefer,
Right.
Myron or Win, and you could tell a lot about.
No, you want both.
Which one, right? I mean, like, I'd want to take Win away for 2 or 3 weeks, but I want to marry Myron is usually the.
Yes,
consensus. It would be a fun fling, super intense, and be destructive. Ultimately destructive. Myron was the one you'd want to marry. So, yeah, all the characters are you in some way. I created Myron to be me with wish fulfillment. So I'm closest to Myron. That's my thinking and my personality, probably. But what I've learned is that I think the appeal for Win, for example, and Wilde to some degree, is even though the decisions maybe you wouldn't make, you kind of admire it and sort of wish you could be Win a little bit. You wish you could be a little
That's
more
right.
provocative.
It is that stuff. It's all the stuff you think you can do in your dreams, Like, I used to tell John, dude, I just had the weirdest dream. I just had a bar brawl and I won, and that would be a win. And when you're lost in the woods and you get out, that's a Wilde. I mean, there's so many people you can relate to. And Hester, though, she's probably my absolute fave.
Are you hearing a noise too, or is that just on my
Yeah, I'm
end?
hearing like a
Yeah,
buzzy,
there's some weird hissy thing.
Yeah,
I don't
okay.
care. Somebody has to
I
like.
don't know
go
if
get
Hudson
this
Library is
thing out.
listening in. It's
my
not there or then, so it's getting louder. So I don't know what exactly that is,
I
but
don't know.
I don't know if Hudson Library is paying attention or they're on.
The library.
I know. We're troubleshooting it on our end. We're trying to figure out where the sound is coming
You were
from.
talking for a second and stopped. It might be on one of your ends there somehow, but yeah, I know you're muted. But anyway, we'll keep. Yeah, I can hear it kind of going in and out now. Anyway, we'll continue.
Isn't
But I
that
just
weird?
wanted-
Whatever. I just like talking to Harlan.
but we'll just keep going, and we'll just if you want to.
Talking.
We're finding it annoying. I hope not. But anyway,
See you. Feel free.
it's been great. It's
getting louder.
huge, man.
Oh my God! It's getting something.
Yeah, it's getting a little loud.
Yes.
Anyway,
Well, what I was going to ask you
Yep.
is what's on your nightstand? What are you reading next? I literally brought down my nightstand to show you. First of all, I did not read this copy. I read the galley, and it's all twisted and covered with silk. This is the copy that I put in my guest room, Harlan.
Look, can I ask you a question? How do you feel about? Because I love reading books, your book, anyone's book, on the devices.
Right.
If I can make the print
I
really
like
big,
reading. I can't hear
and
anything.
I know it's really loud, but maybe you can hear me over.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
So I like the devices because I can make the font really big. I don't have to wear glasses, and I can read it in bed, so I don't wake her up with the light. And I
I
can
like
bring,
books.
Books everywhere. What do you think about that as opposed to like actual paper,
So
books?
here's my feeling on it, and this is good audio. I don't care if you read me on a stone tablet. I mean, as long as you're reading me, I am, like, if it's a business, I'm the content side of it. So however you deliver it, I have no religion about that at all. You guys do what you want to do. If you want to do an ebook,
But what do you think?
What do you?
I do everything. I do everything.
You read everything.
See, I do it all. I mean, I'm mostly, depends if I'm traveling, for example, and I want to bring a lot of books with me, then maybe I'll use the Kindle or the Nook or whatever one we have. I do whatever I can do to read and get it when I want to get it. But I mean, I understand the ebook and audio has become huge. I'm sure the library can tell you too. In the last few years,
So great.
it's hilarious.
Life is my God,
Kelsey, you
it's
look
so
panicked.
loud.
You okay,
It
Kelsey?
sounds like cicadas.
We hate to
It
interrupt,
sounds
but we're
like
gonna
That's okay.
cicadas.
We want to do a quick test of my, we're going to mute you each one at a time because it has to be coming from one of your devices.
I'll
So we're going to mute.
Oh, something.
It's from Harlan.
Wow, now it's fine, right?
Yeah, now
Do
it's
you have
fine.
like a device near your device or anything like that?
No.
Sometimes having
Weird.
like two electronics can cause interference.
All right, so we're back, guys. Hope nobody.
Okay.
Yes,
Awesome.
cheers, let's move on.
Okay,
All right,
thanks.
All
so,
right, we're starting over. Ladies and gentlemen, Harlan Coben.
no, we're not, stop it, stop it. So, the match, I ate in about 36 hours. I love it. He set it up, but these are the things that are on my nightstand right now. What's on your nightstand right now? What are you reading right now?
Let's see. I'm mostly reading books people are not going to know because they're advanced. I try to read a fair amount of advanced copies for authors that maybe you don't yet know. I sometimes go on different shows and I'll pick books. I do feel there's a responsibility to sort of send the elevator back down. Alison
Nice.
Galen's The Collective is a recent one that I really enjoyed. Janelle Brown, who's one of my favorites, has a new one coming out that I just got in the mail. Tess Gerritsen just sent me her newest, so I will be reading that. So those are three that I'm trying to stick with. And I also always have a sort of an essay or nonfiction book, and the Anna Quinlan book, which is just terrific. Is also those are four that I have.
Anna's terrific.
Yeah.
I love David Byrne. I brought down mine.
Yeah.
David Byrne's art, A History of the World in Dingbats. Love.
The best.
Brad, of course, was just on with his book too, but I didn't read this book. I read the galley of this book many, many months ago. I loved Brian Cox. The Brian Cox memoir is dark and hilarious. And
See, that's one I'll do on audio. I'll do like Brian Cox's. I love
so you can
doing.
hear him.
I
Right.
know his voice, but I love doing audios. I did with our mutual friend Juliana Margulies' book
Yes.
that way, and Katie Couric's book that way. I love doing, if I'm going to read memoirs, modern day Michelle Obama's book, and who I know you're close friends with, and I know you actually.
I
heard
did two of her
The
events.
Dave Grohl audiobook's supposed to be really good too. I haven't.
I haven't heard that
I love
one.
to listen at night. Those are ones I'll sit in bed, and frankly, I usually fall asleep to them. I'll just
They're
rewind
like
it.
bedtime stories,
Yeah.
right?
I love it. I just love doing that. I can't do audio for fiction because my mind is wandering too much. And then I'm like, wait, where did it go? And then I'll turn the pages and look. But with an audio, it's harder to do that. So I don't do very much audio fiction. I don't know how everybody else feels about that. So everybody, like I said, this is what's so great that you have all these choices. If you want to do, like I said, I was saying before, maybe you couldn't hear with the stuff, but I don't care if you read me on stone tablets, as long as you're reading me. If you want to read a book, big print, small print, hardcover, or you want to listen on audio or whatever it is, that's what's so great. And there's so many things, and libraries are now good about trying to help everybody who wants to do whatever they want to do.
I love that we're doing an event together that celebrates people still reading books, supports libraries and independent booksellers. I have been selling books, not as many as you, but I've written 27 or something. But I have to tell you, I love holding a book. And even though I had ripped through the galley, I love having one that's hardcover. And I have rebuilt a library. One of our homes burned down and our apartment sank 3 times in a year. And I love rebuilding a library. And I bought my apartment because of its proximity to a bookstore. And I just want to point that out because it's so important to keep the art alive and to keep books alive. And I have replaced every library. I have repurchased hardcovers of many of Harlan's books for every place I live, not only so I can revisit them, but so my friends and visitors can read them for the first time too, but to have them, to hold them, and to feel them, and to have them in my life.
But you are very generous that way. I mean, like if I'm at your house or whatever else, and there's a book that you're excited about, you'll just hand it to somebody.
Yeah.
And that's how you
I think
you
it's
love to
important
share
to do
that.
that.
You love to do that.
If you have a bunch of books in your house and someone sees something and you've already read it, obviously, and then they're like, "Oh, give it to them." That's amazing. That's
Books
what's
mean
great about
everything to me. All of my life, a pen and a paper, this conversation, everything. A pen and a paper and something on paper means everything to me. And I love that we still do book talks like this. But I wonder what you think about that.
No,
I remember going on book tour when there would be hundreds or more people waiting, and you talk to them and hug them and sign things and spend time chatting. I'm sure you've done this over the decades you've been writing as well. And it's so weird to me to only do events like this.
Right.
I don't know if we're keeping books alive. What do you feel about the book industry itself?
I mean, look, I'm not smart enough to know. I mean, everything you said is absolutely true. And the beauty of books and the beauty of having an event like this is there's no downside. It's all good. Anything involving books, libraries, bookstores, there's no negative. Even with cooking, you can say, well, maybe my health is compromised by whatever it is. There's nothing bad. It's all good when you're learning and you're reading and you're in the world of books. And there's no place that I like to be more. And I've always felt comfort. When I was really young, there was one, at the time it wasn't a chain, it was a Barnes and Noble store on 18th, down by 18th Street, not far from where you guys are when I was a kid. And,
yes, we've been
on
there
Sundays,
many
my
times.
parents would bring us in. And you could they would give you a brown paper bag that you could fill with books for $5. And my family would spend all day there browsing. And then my father would pack it like it was the trunk of his car, like where you get maximizing space.
Really carefully
You get as many books
maximizing the spaces.
So I've always, I grew up with a love affair, not even just of reading, but of actually having books around.
Having
I think
books,
there's
yeah.
something really, really comforting that. In terms of the business and where we're going, I'm not smart enough. Like, when people are like, oh, this is going to destroy the industry, and this is going to destroy the industry, and then this is going to, I'm like a child. I go, la, 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 I can't hear you. And I figure as long as my books are good enough, again, you'll read them on stone tablets if that's going to be the delivery system. So it's almost a serenity prayer. I've learned to only focus on what I can control, which is making sure the story that I write is the absolute best it can. How it sells, how it's marketed, I get involved with that a little bit, but I'm not particularly good at it. It's not my forte, and that's what I have publishers for and agents and all that stuff for. My job is to write, and I still feel that pressure. I mean, every book that I've written, I want the match to be the best book I've ever written. If somebody reads it, which always happens, and they kindly say to me, oh, well, I really enjoyed it, but Tell No One's still my favorite. I'm a little disappointed. I always want the new one. I want the new one, but that's what drives you, I've never phoned one in. I've never done one I wasn't proud of. Never. And none of the books I would look back on with regret. Some are better than others, but each time I fool myself into believing the newest book is my best. And that's part of what keeps me going. And I also feel, look, there's a lot of people there. You walk into a bookstore, and if you're picking mine, that's a tremendous honor. There's thousands and thousands of books in that.
So right? Isn't that amazing?
It's a tremendous honor. And I take
see my name on a shelf somewhere, I almost fall over. But Harlan has an entire section in every bookstore. I know because I live next door to the Strand. That's why I bought my apartment. And I have rebuilt my libraries. I have the Coben Library in each of the places we live. We've rebuilt it twice in 2 places. And we built it for the first time in Italy. We have so much Coben in our lives because it's fun and it's exciting and it's smart and it's cool. And I know that it's your hands on it. There's so many people that work in partnerships. That's another thing I wanted to ask you about. There's so many folks that work in partnership these days. You would never, I just don't see you, just because I know you personally, I don't see that that would be a thing you would probably be cool with. No?
I don't think, look, I never say never. I get, the collaboration aspect. First of all, as a novelist, yeah, I'm a dictator. So I don't think that would work. And my mind works in a way that'd be very hard in terms of writing books. In terms, I think I get my collaboration though out when I do the TV. So all the TV, as you know, of course, is a ridiculously collaborative process.
And you take your projects all over the world.
Right.
That's why I was gently touching on that earlier. Like, are you going to write about international stories now because of what's going on in the world itself? I mean, between climate or Ukraine and all of that, where are you going next? You said you're 150 pages in. Can you give us any sort of?
That's all in the. That starts mostly it starts in Maine actually, and moves down. Right now we're in New York City, so I don't know where we're going to go from there. I think there'll be a lot
based of. Like, did you go on vacation in Maine? Like, is that?
No, it starts in a prison that's in Maine, so that's why I started it there. I wanted to be somewhere a little more remote, but could be driven down all the way to New York or New Jersey. So that's sometimes there's not much rhyme or reason.
Jersey has gone all over the world, honey. I mean, Jersey's gone to
I know.
Poland, France. Yeah, I mean,
my brother lived in Mahwah for a few years, so I know about the.
That's right where this book takes place. I fictionalized the town, but it's Mahwah is one of the towns that is where Wilde lived.
I know.
Yeah. So
I know about
Mahwah,
the
old
families
Indian
that
areas.
live in the woods and the whole thing.
So when you take a show to a different country,
Yep.
how do you do that collaboration? How do you broker that deal? Because I know you're an on-set person.
Some of them, it depends on the country. Some I know England fairly well, so I'm quite comfortable there. And that's where probably the one I've done the most work, Stay Close, Stranger, Safe. And we're going to do another one. We're starting another one now. I can't yet mention which book it is. And those I feel very, very comfortable in. Poland, for example, where I did The Woods and now Hold Tight, I'm not as comfortable. So there are writers who will say to me, the summer camps that you had in the woods, we don't really have those kind of summer camps, but we have something really cool.
Oh, I gotcha.
And so these teen camps that were at high school would go all together. And visually, I thought it was stunning what they did with those summer camps in the woods. And you mentioned the universes. So at the end of the TV series, The Woods, because this is how the Polish are, they leave the ending a little more open-ended than I did. I did leave it a little open-ended in terms of, do these two people, Laura and Pavel, get together? I had the same question in the book, and I answered it in the next book called Hold Tight, and they do the same thing. So in the new one that's coming out, it'll be out April 22nd. I just put the trailer up on my social media yesterday, I think. The actor who played Pavel and the actress who played Laura are in it with smaller parts, but you will find out what happened to them after.
Right.
So that's the first time, as John was mentioning, the universe, where I'm bringing people from one universe into the other. And Richard Armitage starred in two of them in a row.
Oh my God. Oh.
Yeah, and he played completely different roles, but I love having Richard back.
I know, but such a fabulous actor.
And a wonderful guy.
Such a great team. It's so funny because I love reading your books because I visit with my friends and I know them and they're real to me. They're actual people to me. But then when you watch you too, it's freaky because you also become addicted to like humans, and it's kind of trippy.
Yeah.
I like the headspace for me because in my mind, they all look a certain way and act a certain way. And we talk about this privately among the three of us, how we see all of these people in our head is so weird. Do you see images of them when you're writing them?
I actually try in my own head to keep them somewhat vague and try to describe them in a somewhat vague way so that you can create your own. This is one of the reasons why.
But I'm saying, what do you think? Do you have a picture of them?
It's very vague. It's intentionally vague because also, here's the thing with this is why I'm not slavishly devoted when I do adaptations. Some people want the adaptation to be, I want it to be exactly the same as the book. First of all, if you want the same experience as the book, read the book. But there's a very big difference between novels and TV series. One is a visual medium, one is not. And so they should be very, very different. That's the worst adaptations are the ones that stay slavishly devoted to the text. The best, in my view, are the ones where I don't ask, how can I make it closer to the book? It's how can I make it a great, an interesting, fun, exotic TV series. But the other problem is exactly what you say. If I ask everybody there for actors for Myron Bolitar, I will get, if I ask 10 people, I'll get 11 different answers because everybody sees them differently. And so everyone's a little disappointed when you sometimes will see somebody. So I try to let all of that go. By the way, the other series I just want to mention, Amazon Prime, I'm doing the Mickey Bolitar, the young adult series.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So Constance Zimmer, who we both know and love, and if you remember Constance,
love her so much.
Entourage and Unreal.
Oh my
and
God,
Big
she's
Sky.
amazing.
She's the lead adult. I shouldn't say adult actress because that comes off as something else.
No, but it's
the lead is the actress in the two.
Nature. She's extraordinary and a force of nature.
She's just great.
If you're a New Yorker, she's also a great onstage person.
And if you read any of those books, we have a fantastic Mickey, a fantastic Spoon, and Ema, and Rachel, and Buck, and all the kids. I say kids, the actors are more like 20, but the high school kids. And we actually are filming it right here in New Jersey.
They're kids to us.
I know, we're filming it right here in New Jersey, which I'm so excited about. And we actually filmed the pilot, which we already filmed in my high school, which is the high school I used. Yeah, so hopefully for those who always are like, well, can you do one here in the U.S.? That'll be the first in the U.S. And we'll be filming that in New Jersey. The rest of it, we filmed the pilot already, starting probably this summer. Rachel,
that is so exciting.
Do you guys want to pop in? And I know you guys wanted to save time for questions, Kelsey. I don't want us to run because I said Rachel and I and now John, you'll never stop us. We'll be.
You have great chemistry.
Oh God, we could be here for like 10 hours.
I know you guys got to close in 9 minutes. So go ahead.
It's okay for a few minutes extra. It's okay. I do want to say just kudos to you, Harlan, because I've been cherry picking audience questions and you managed to answer like 3 of them right in a row just before I came on.
This isn't my first talk.
I just want to give some acknowledgement to some of the people that were in the audience, and we do have a few minutes. So if you have questions, feel free to send them in. There's still time for it to be asked. We do have a lot of Myron fans in the chat, as I'm sure you know. And we did have Marissa really wanting to know if she'll ever get her visual representation of Myron. And as you were just talking about everyone having a different opinion.
The answer is probably yes. I don't right now have any news to say, and it's not going to happen right away with Myron. But there's constantly works and adaptations in the work. I'm a little more careful with that because that's not like The Woods or Tell No One where I'd be happy to change the country. I did one where I changed the gender of the lead, the stranger in the book.
That's right, the stranger.
And in the series, it's a woman, but not with Myron. So I'm a little more careful with that one, and so it'll take more time and more care. I do think probably if you were to say to me, we're going to be talking in 5 years, I would say, but you never know. Also, that's the other thing with Hollywood or any place else when it comes to adaptations. It's so hard to get them on and get them done. You can't believe all the hoops you have to go through. So I hope so, but I don't know. That's the answer to that one.
Sounds great. I have a question. We have some diehard fans in the audience tonight, but we also have some people that just tuned in to you to hear you because they've actually never even read you. Marielle in the audience wants to know, she's never read any of your books, but she wants to start. Where should she begin? What would you recommend?
I would say people, if you're on, go into that chat room and type up your suggestions. I'm the worst person to ask. Most people will say, tell no one.
I was just going to say, of course, tell no one.
But I should say, I don't know what Rachel's going to answer, but most people will say, tell no one. So I don't know what other people feel. And then other people will say the Myron Bolitar series, but I don't know if that's the way to go or not.
I got to jump in on this. Every single book you pick up, you can read in and of itself. It's a freestanding unit. You can read The Match, which is fantastic, and you'll understand it and you'll get it. You don't have to go back 6
And
books.
Harlan's really good at like connecting the dots between the current novel and prior novels in a really easy and simple way. Like just
you
dropping
can read
the clues
any
in
of them, and we love all of them. And every time you pick one up, the promise is you can't put it down.
Yeah.
That's the thing. is no matter which one you pick up, you can't put the book down until it's done. And you get through it because you just simply have to. But they're independent works. They really are. You don't need to pick a specific lane to drive in or start with a character in one place. They are freestanding entities.
It's like
I'm
James-
I would
just
also
saying.
recommend don't read the real old ones because they're a
Fingers.
little dated. I would not read Play Dead. I would not read Miracle Cure. I would not read the very early ones. Some of them I even
You're
put
not helping yourself here, brother.
I know, but it's like you want people to watch your first episode. You know what I mean? It's like,
I can
Go
say
ahead.
that your audience tonight here is very opinionated. Our Q&A just got flooded with a whole bunch of recommendations. And I think
Oh, wow. It just,
Got that.
I would just say start with the big series. That's what I would do. I'm a series gal, so I would probably recommend starting with the series. All right. So we do have just a fun question from Amber. She wants to know, do you think you can survive? And if so, how long could you survive in the woods if you were abandoned there like Wilde did? And she loves every single book from you.
Thank you.
Oh.
About an hour. About an hour. Hour and a half if I have food and water with me.
You have one of those Econo line things or Econo
yeah, the
egg.
little pop-up he lives in.
As soon as I find there's no internet, I'm gone. If you don't,
Okay.
maybe if you gave me a piece of paper and a pen, I could survive a little longer because I could write. But I'd be whining about hunger and like, oh, there's mosquitoes. I would not. That would not be me.
For God's sake.
All right. Let's see. Sean wants to know. Sean says he loves your ending twist. So there you
Thank
go.
you.
And when
Oh,
you develop
fantastic, by the way. The ending of this.
Okay,
thing-
stop there.
All right. No, shush. I know.
All right, no spoilers though. But when you develop a new story, do you already have that little twist in your mind, or do you develop
The
it
ending, I know. I do know the ending before I start, and that helps a lot. The hard part is how, like in this book, there's about 5 things you have to find out. You have to find out why the cousin is missing, how are they related, who did the murder, all those things. The hard part for me is getting them in the right order so I can maximize not just the surprise, but in this case especially, I want there to be emotion. I want you to maybe shed a little bit of a tear when Wilde finds out the answer. Oh, good. Thank you, Rachel. But you're an easy cry. You're an easy cry. But I want you, when you find out what happened to Wilde and how he ended up in the woods, I want it to be a big surprise. And then I also want it to be emotionally impactful. So that's the hard. So I knew, the first thing I'm doing when I first thought of that idea that I mentioned in the beginning, hold on, I'm going to do this mute again for a second. And then I'm back, and I don't know what that
There
is.
you go. You're fine.
So when I do that, the first thing I think of is, well, okay, you have the story about a guy who's out of the woods. How did he get in the woods? And I really don't start writing. And it might take me 2 or 3 months to come up with how did he end up in the woods? But I need to know, I knew the ending before. In every book, except the book I wrote called The Woods, the only book where I didn't know the ending when I started. Every other book, I know the ending. It doesn't really change. What happens is there's more things added in, because I think it's going to be just about.
But you know where you're going.
It's going to be right. How did Wilde end up in the woods? But that's not the answer. Also, you got to find out who's murdering these people, who is, what happened to the cousin Peter, all those sort of things. That'll come later. Good
Sounds
question.
great. Let's see. Steven wants to know, Steven's an audiobook fan, and he really loves how you use Steven Weber as your narrator.
Yeah.
What kind of relationship do you have with Steven Weber, and do you have a say in selecting him to voice your books?
I love, this is Steven Weber, for those who don't, he's the guy, he starred in Wings. He's been on The Shining. He's been on a million.
Terrific. He's amazing.
He's right now, I think he's on that Chicago Med. I think he's on now. He's just a great actor and great guy. So this is a true story. I think it was 1999 or 2000. He called me out of the blue. He had been reading the Myron Bolitar novels and just wanted to tell me how much he really enjoyed them, which I just thought was the nicest, sweetest thing. We became friends from that. And there was someone who was reading the Myron books at the time, but when I moved to Tell No One, which was 2001, they were like, well, who would be a good audio reader? And Weber has that voice because he's got the kind of sarcastic city thing that my guys have. So I asked him, I don't think he'd done a book yet. I said, do you want to do this? And he's like, I'd love to give it a try. And so for 20 years now, he hasn't done every book, but almost every book. 3 or 4 have been lead women characters. I have a different woman narrator, and Scott Brick did 1 or 2 in the middle. But for the most part, Steven Weber has been my guy now for the last 20 years, and we've become good friends. And he's hilarious. He will contact me in the middle of the book. Like, he intentionally doesn't read the book until he does the audio. So when he has surprise voice, it's more legit. Then he has to go back.
God, I could never do that. I would die if I didn't.
And then one time, I think it was the Win book. Was it Win? No, it was Runaway. I named a detective after an actor I love and a friend of mine from the Five named O.T. Fagbenle, who stars. He plays the husband in what's the Margaret Atwood? Oh God, just flew out of my head. The Margaret Atwood books. The Margaret Atwood.
Handmaid's Tale?
The Handmaid's Tale. He plays her husband in The Handmaid's Tale. He's going to be Barack Obama in the new Obama series that's coming out. He's
Wow.
But anyway, he calls me up and goes, "Why would you give me this hard to pronounce name? I got to say 400 times." But he'll call to complain if I have a weird character name. But we're good. We are good friends. I love him as a reader, and I think he does a great job with the match. And he was very happy to do Win because he never liked the way he did Win when he took over the Myron series, because the guy originally did the Myron series retired. And that's a longer answer than they wanted. And we're probably almost out of time. You want to do one more question, Kelsey, or should we wrap it up?
I just want to let you
to buy both books. Please buy both books, The Match and Win.
There we go. So not so much a question. I just want you to know we've had numerous people in our Q&As tonight. Absolutely love tonight's presentation. They loved your conversations. It was just like old friends at a bar, pretty much.
Well, can I just tell you, Rachel and John are legitimately 2 of my closest friends, and I adore them to death. They helped us also through the pandemic, because what Rachel did during the pandemic in the beginning is she invited us, my wife and I, to have cook-alongs with them. So we would once a month.
John would send cocktail ingredients.
And John would send cocktails. They would send me all. Imagine this, people who I know all of you are Rachel Ray fans already. Rachel would send me all the food, and John would send the drinks, and then we would get on a Zoom, and Rachel would actually teach us how to cook these meals. And even she sent us in the beginning the pots and pans, which, by the way, we thought all our other ones, we only use Rachel's because they're such good quality and they're non-stick and they're really reasonably priced. So I'm not trying to sell her pots and pans here, but I use her dog food and her pots and pans as well.
Thank you.
She's been a very generous friend. And so it's an honor. And this is just 2 friends just chatting. This is how it is when we're on the Zoom with each other and no one's in the audience. So thank you.
Well, no pressure at all, but just so you know, many people in our audience tonight are requesting you to come back at some point in the future for both of you. And the library would love to have that opportunity.
Well, when Rachel's next book is out, we are there.
Whenever Harlan says, boo, I say yes. And I'll jump however high he wants forever and ever, of course.
Well, that is so sweet of you.
This.
And thank you to both of you. Seriously. Thank you, Harlan. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, John, for joining us as well.
John.
Because
I always drag John out.
As part of our club.
Yeah. I see John in the wings on the show, I drag him out also. He can't escape me. So.
Next time we'll have Ann come out here too.
That's right. Ann hides. Ann's smart. She knows. She knows she'd have to come on, so she's hiding. Thank you, guys. Good night, everybody.
Thank you guys so much.